Hi, this is the Brock and Dave Drillercast. I'm Brock Yorty, and I have my host with me, Dave Bowers. Hey, Dave.
How you doing, Brock? How you doing, everybody?
Good.
Doing good. It's
Doing
it's
good.
the Sunday after Veterans Day, and we wanted to have a Veterans Day driller discussion. My father, Vietnam vet, United States Marine, he once getting out of the Marines and back to civilian life, became a driller, got his license, ended up opening his own business, had that business for 40 plus years and just retired. I've met many great World War II and Vietnam vets and into our current Gulf wars and whatnot. I've met some great men and women that are in this industry that were veterans. And I thought it'd be a great discussion to have about veterans in our industry. We got Captain Jake Fletcher with us today. Jake, go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about your what you've done in the Air Force.
Yeah, so I'm Captain Jake Fletcher. I spent 5 years on active duty in the Air Force as a civil engineering officer. The last 2 years I was with the 820th Red Horse Squadron, where I learned about drilling and really developed my passion to want to get into that industry. I just recently transferred into the Air Force Reserves, and I'm still a part of Red Horse with the reserve unit. So I continue to try and improve and help the drilling side in the Air Force as I seek to pursue civilian options and careers in the drilling industry also. So glad to be here.
And then we have Chief Al Robin, who has been all over the world on drilling projects and is now retired. Chief, introduce yourself.
How you doing? My name is Al Robin, retired Chief Master Sergeant E9 from Air Force. Served 30 years, last 21 of which were in Red Horse in various units and deployed detachments. Well drilling basically was my special capability from the time I got into Red Horse. It's one of those special capabilities that not many consider important until they don't have water at their site, and then we become superstars and heroes, and we deliver water to them out of the ground. But I've been all over the world: South America, Europe, Middle East, of course. Drilled over 24 wells in deployed areas. It's been one hell of a ride. Finally retired. Been traveling around the country, seeing the great United States of America, and getting a feel for what I fought 30 years for. And I'll tell you, it's a beautiful country, a lot of beautiful people.
And when we were planning this, Brock, as is Brock's well-to-do, he knows a lot of guys in the water well industry. That's primarily the industry that he grew up in and around. I, have a similar experience to Brock. I was never in the military, but I was raised by a gentleman who was a 23-year service member, retired as a Master Sergeant in the U.S. Army. And, I'm still grateful to the way that he approached things. I kind of approach things the same way, in that it's real clear how to make a move, what's right or wrong, and what's good or bad. So when we were talking about this, Brock brought it up. I said, well, let's get somebody not in the water well industry, because the only drilling that happens is not water well drilling. So I had reached out to a veteran I knew that works for a geotechnical testing company, Dan Meloff. Dan, introduce yourself.
My name is Dan Maloff. I was a hospital corpsman, United States Navy, for 8 years in the 90s. And I was stationed at Great Lakes. And then I was stationed on the USS Peleliu. And I came back to Great Lakes after that. I have a lot of years of running an ambulance, picking up recruits. I was a respiratory therapist, and pretty much I did things that had nothing to do with drilling whatsoever before. I've been geotechnical driller for 17 years, and quite honestly, I love my job. And it's a great job. Every day is different. Every hole is different, and that's what keeps it together all the time. You run different machines. You do many different things. Definitely, the things I learned in the Navy that transfer over to what I do now. The way I go about things, the way you get up and you go to work every day, and you do it, and you love it, and that's the way it is.
Well, thank you for your service, Dan, Chief, and Jake. Dan, I had no idea you were at the Great Lakes Naval Hospital. My father in Vietnam, 2 weeks after he did some things to receive the Navy Cross, 2 weeks later was out and encountered an explosive device and spent 11 months in the Great Lakes Naval Hospital being rehabilitated on his knees. So he talked fondly about the men and women at that hospital and how he spent nearly a year there with them, and was very fond memories.
Sure. And I probably still know some corpsmen that are retired that might have worked on your dad back then, to tell you the truth, that were stationed at Great Lakes back in the 70s, early 70s. I'm not sure when he was in there, but I know some guys that definitely were stationed there then.
Well, that is very cool. So, Dan, how did you find drilling?
Quite honestly, my uncle's next door neighbor is our senior driller, and I got out of the Navy December 31st in 1999, and I built some houses and garages, and everybody kind of runs around. I was running a bar over here by the base, actually, right outside Great Lakes for a while. And I had known Mark for years, and his name's Mark Baker. And he's still our senior driller right now. He just turned 60 years old. He's been on the rig since he was, I think, 14 years old or 15 years old. He's been on a drill since then. And he pretty much taught me everything. And he told me one day, he goes, "Hey, we're gonna hire." And I said, "Well, why not? I'll go there. I'll go get a job. Why not?" So I did, and within 9 months, I was on the rig drilling for myself. So it definitely has worked out all the way around.
Well, I say a lot that this industry picks you. You don't always pick it. You mentioned Mark Baker. Mark Baker is another gentleman that I've spent a lot of time with and around, but his father is a giant in the geotechnical engineering field. Clive Baker is like about as big as it can go in engineering. I had a engineer once who Pat Harrison had been around all these places and was held in high regard. And he comes back from a conference one time and tells me, "Hey, I got to be on the same stage with Clyde Baker." So, that just shows you this gentleman started working for the same company, didn't decide that he didn't want to be an engineer like his dad, decided that he would run a drill. And it's funny how things come full circle. I didn't know his name would be mentioned. The person who taught him, guess who the name is, Brock? Starts with a D.
Dominic Sinabazi.
That's right. So it is just amazing how, our industry, we seem big and everything comes back all the time, where there is not many, there's that 6 degrees of separation, right? Where everybody's connected. And that's one of the beautiful things about this industry. Competitors aren't really competitors when there's a problem most of the time. Hey, how do I get out of this? What can I do? And I've always thought that was kind of cool. And that's the same kind of attitude you learn in the military, right? Where one guy's got a problem, everybody's got a problem.
So,
Absolutely.
Chief, 30 years in the Air Force. When did you encounter drilling as your what you would be doing, and how did you get to go on so many deployments? Because I've said this often, and it's something that Jake and I talk about. Like the recruiter, there wasn't one recruiter when I was a senior in high school about to graduate that said, "Oh, you're from a water well drilling family. You love groundwater science. Did you know that the Army National Guard has rigs and trains at a Camp Atterbury, or that the Navy is training with drill rigs at China Lake, or that the United States Air Force has rigs that deploy all over the world?" Nobody said that to me. That wasn't something. So how did you find it? And then how did you continue to get on those deployments?
So first off, even people in the military, Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, they don't know that the military has a well drilling capability until you tell them, hey, we drill for water pretty deep in some places, and their eyes just light up. They're like, really? You guys aren't contractors? Nope, we're military, even though we're wearing Carhartts most of the time. But I will tell you, my original run-in with well drilling was against my will, to be honest with you. Prior to my assignment to Red Horse, I was working with EOD in Germany and Bosnia, doing explosive demolition, tearing down revetments, things of that nature, blowing them up. So when I got to Red Horse, I knew they had an explosive demolition program, and I tried to get into it. Well, everybody's trying to get into play with explosives, so I basically was told, no, we've got enough guys. You need a different special capability. And then when I found out that, I wanted to maybe go do rock crushing, work with big equipment. And basically my boss came back and said, no, I need a well driller. So tag, you're it. And I'm scratching my head. I'm like, well drilling? What are we drilling for? Oil? What? So he basically took me out to the rig. Mike DeShawn was my boss. He basically grabbed me by the shoulder and brought me out to the rig and showed me the different components and how things work. And it seemed kind of interesting to me, the physical labor of it, just being a helper, which is where I started, of course. I like to work. I like making things happen. The only thing I didn't like was not being able to see what was going on in the ground. But anyways, that's one of those jobs that you got to trust your instincts, and that's the other part that I liked about it. But yeah, I spent probably a good year and a half as the helper in the derrick hand. Never really ran the rig, not until we got to our first big deployment, which was down in Bolivia. We had 2 water wells to drill out in the jungle. And the first time my boss let me on the rig, we were air drilling, just starting a hole. We were 2 sticks in, and we encountered a buried sand dune. And he let me drill a second stick, and it went in like butter. Of course, we were air drilling. It was only a 6-inch pilot hole. But I managed to sand lock everything up. When I shut down to trip a new rod in, everything fell back in, and we couldn't get the bit out. So my boss got back on the rig, and he played around with it for a few minutes and finally got everything loose, pulled it out. We moved over and started another hole, this time with mud, now that we knew that we had a sand dune that we had to drill through. But that was my first experience actually running the controls, seizing everything up and causing an issue. But if you don't run into problems, you'll never learn how to get out of them, So smooth drilling to me is very boring. I'd rather run across some issues and try to figure out how to get out of them. Not to the detriment of the hole, but to me, it's a little more interesting when you encounter issues that you have to solve. So after that, after Bolivia, I was with the 819th Red Horse, and we basically drilled all over the missile fields in the U.S., which was, Nebraska, a little bit in Colorado, a little bit in Wyoming, a little bit in Montana. But that's where we developed our gameplay, so to speak. A lot of these wells in the Northwest, you have to go deep to find decent water. Some places it's 1,200 feet. Well, the rig we had couldn't case that deep, go in 10 or 12 inch casing. It was too heavy for the rig. So we learned how to telescope. We learned how to use a float chute. So some of the advanced drilling methods we took pride in doing well. And we just got better and better from there. Once my boss moved on to different things, I became the lead driller and, had my own team that we basically got going on different projects, doing different things. That's where we started into directional drilling and large diameter horizontal auger boring. So it became basically, well, not just well drilling, but industrial drilling in general was our forte. And then from there, of course, we moved on to Desert Storm 2 and going to the desert and just drilling all over the place because they quickly realized we can move troops forward, but if we don't have water to support them, they're limited on mobility at that point, especially with a lot of the water deliveries getting blown up by roadside bombs, unfortunately. But there was a lot of instances where we'd go out to a fob and we start drilling and there wasn't enough water to support us. So they would actually have to airdrop 55-gallon drums of water to us, 6 on a pallet at a time, 10 pallets at a time, just being flung out of a C-17. And I think usually 1 or 2 would burn in, which was fun to watch as long as you weren't anywhere near them. But, that's how we got our water at some of these fobs to actually drill a well and produce water. So that was a lot of good experience, learning how to manage without all the resources you need to drill wells. But it was a fun career. It was a great career. I'd do it all over again if my wife would let me. But it was a lot of deployments, a lot of time away from family as well. But well worth the sacrifice to get our troops what they need to fight the bad guys.
Well, you mentioned what I think all drillers, what Dan mentioned it as well earlier, what makes drilling unique is that no 2 days are ever the same, right? No 2 holes are the same. They could be 2 feet from each other. They're not the same. They're going to act different, and you get to figure out how, so developing that mind's eye, that's when what happened that first time when you stuck it, you were learning to pull levers. Later, when you learn to fix things, you were learning to be a driller, which requires that mind's eye where you feel things, hear things, see things that are a little different on the surface and have to interpret what's going on in the hole. And that's always an exciting thing because you're never 100% sure that your interpretation is right until your remedy fixes it.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot better to be able to be on the site and help the young guys figure things out. Go through the motions, make sure that they've thought about all the different aspects of well drilling before they decide on a course of action. Because sometimes, things will go south and people just start grabbing levers and trying different things without actually stopping to think things through, the physics of drilling, how the rig works, all those different aspects. And sometimes the older guys that are there, we can slow things down and make sure that they're not getting ahead of themselves and causing a bigger issue than what they actually have.
So Jake, how did you find well drilling? And obviously we've had you on before and we've talked about some leadership, and you and I have become brothers in this industry and looking for, how we can work together and drill together and stuff. How did you find drilling, and why is it now so ingrained into what you want to do as a career?
So actually, my first experience with a water well ever was in 2017. Before I knew I was going to come to the horse, but I was over in Korea, and we were over there looking at all of the co-located operating bases with the Korean Air Force and looking at the infrastructure. And because my degree background is in water systems and environmental engineering, they asked me to take a look at a water well that had been drilled by the 554th Red Horse Unit in the time that they had been in the Pacific. So I took a look at it. Couldn't find any information on it. Actually, I called the Army Corps of Engineers because that was the greatest resource. They had all the records for the wells. So I called them, and nobody had any records for this well. And the only information I got was that, well, the well is dry. Every time we hook up something to it to try and pump water out of it, it shuts off. It'll run for 10 to 15 minutes and then it'll shut off. And, intuitively, my immediate thought as an engineer was, that doesn't sound like a dry well. That sounds like a mechanical problem to me. And so I had to go through all of the hoops and permissions to get a generator attached to the pump so we could turn this thing on and I could see it. And so I saw it for myself, and immediately, after 15 minutes, it just shut off like that. It wasn't a trickle down effect. It wasn't anything slowing down. So that was kind of my first experience with a well. Now, I don't know that they took my recommendation, but I said that it would be worthwhile to have the 554th come out and look at this and potentially look at the pump. It's a well that hasn't been used for 20 years. And that was my recommendation. So, fast forward, I got done with that time in Korea and I PCS to Vegas. And before I came out here, they had me come down and visit. And that's how I first met Brock. Was he was giving a talk on drilling, and I was sitting and watching this talk, and I recognized the science and the terms that he was talking about. And I said, I understand this. And I didn't know that this was a thing in the Air Force. I didn't know we had water well drillers. And the major, who was in charge of operations at that time, he saw what my degree background was, and he said, we need you to come into drilling. He said, we need to get an officer that can advocate and can understand what these guys need. And so I said, okay. So, from there, it just became something that I got more and more passionate about the more and more I learned about it. And I liked what Chief said. Chief and I were actually at the 820th when he retired. So I got to learn a lot of things from Chief as he was retiring, and we were talking about the direction that the drilling team should go and the training. I liked what he said about smooth drilling is boring, because some of my favorite memories at the 820th were 12 to 14-hour days where we're working through a lot of problems, because if you're standing there and it's going smooth, most of the time it's cold and you're just bored standing there. So I learned all my best lessons, up in the quarry, going down to Luke Air Force Base where the 819th was drilling and trying to help them understand, and drawing in all of the civilian expertise we have, calling folks who had been drillers, and just connecting people with the right information to try and, make us successful. And I think it's really working. I think the drilling program is, progressing in a direction where they're getting back to fundamentals, and and it's, I'm excited. That's why I stayed in Red Horse when I went into the reserves, because mostly because I love the drilling program and I want to be around it, as I move forward. So
That's awesome. Dan, so you're 17 years into this industry now. Um, what did you take from the Navy that helped you right out of the gate? And what is some lessons for some new veterans that may be looking for an industry that you would tell them, or how would you advocate to get, some more vets in the drilling industry?
I think your work ethic comes into effect 100%. You learn in the military. You get up in the morning. You get up. You go to work. You're there on time, if not early. You got to be there. We got to load this. We got to move it. We got to do that. I seem to see a lot of kids that aren't in the construction industry, let's say right now, that aren't motivated at all. I will say, any of our apprentices, because we are in the union. I mean, Dave and we're in the union. I get apprentices from the hall, or guys that come from the hall, or whatever, if we have to call for extra help. Our apprentices that come in, that are young guys, are completely. I got something beeping in the background. I don't know what's going on. Weather or something going on these
Amber
phones.
alert in Illinois.
Is that what it is? Yeah, there's something going on for.
Yes.
Anyway, these guys that come, the kids that show up, are definitely much more motivated than a lot of other kids you see nowadays. I mean, I have a guy now who's been drilling for about 4 or 5 years. We were his first place he came, and when he first came to us, he was 18, 19 years old, whatever. And I swear, every time I said one word to him, it looked like he was going to cry. But he's definitely progressed at all times. And we don't work in an industry where we're going to, let's say, pussyfoot around. We're not going to be nice. There's no nice older driller that I know. We're going to say, go do this now. Get me this, get me this, get me this. It's not, can you please go get this from here really easily and nicely, Dave? You know it. And
I am sure that I was the nicest, sweetest person in the world.
Just like every driller on the rig is gonna, first of all, you're yelling over the top of the rig because nobody, cranks down. You're trying to get something done, and you got to yell or point, and you start, grunting or whatever. They better understand it, kind of thing, is how we end up all looking at it. But once these guys know what's going on, you don't even got to say anything to them. They know what's going on for the day. Well, hey, we're going to do this, all right, in the beginning of the day. And in my industry, compared to water well, we're probably on 2, 3, 4 deeper holes, what we consider deeper, not a water well hole, of course, in a day, where you guys are on a hole, water well guys are on a hole for an extended period of time. I mean, we're hitting 100-footer and then getting another 100-footer, and almost there in a day with for whatever it is. And these guys are set up; they know it. And I see that more. Definitely, guys that come out of the military, you can walk up to them and say, "This is what we're going to do," and there's no question. Okay, let's get it done. Where I think some of the other younger guys definitely are. I don't know if it's just the attitude they have right now or not. But the military definitely teaches you that you're going to get up in the morning, you're going to get it done, and like it or not, it's going to get done. So
I just had a kid, and truly a kid, 19, leave for the Army.
Yeah.
And just what you were talking about, Dan, I've known this kid since he was little, and I know how difficult he could be to motivate. And my wife says to me, does he have any idea? And I'm like, apparently not, because he's going to have a rough time. The next 6 weeks are going to be rough. Probably the next 2 weeks will be rough, and then he'll figure it out. But, like I said, I the last 10 years of my father's service were as a drill instructor. So I have a little clue what that could be like. But someone who's not motivated, they're going to motivate you, right? And that's good. You're going to come out. You're going to come out of the backside of this a better person for your time in. And I think that's really what all this is about. Even the drilling industry, right? someone coming in from the drilling industry, no matter what their beginning is, we're hoping that it helps them develop as a person. It helps you develop professionally. And Dan was talking about work ethic. The whole doesn't allow you to decide your work ethic.
Right.
When things need to be done, they need to be done, and you don't get the choice in it. Or you could wind up like Chief's first hole, where now we're losing tooling in the hole because we didn't move when we should have.
Right. Definitely. I think that kid you said is going away to boot camp. He's going to come back a little changed, and you're definitely going to know it when he gets back. And your wife will say, "Wow, he did come back changed." He will have respect for everything, and it would take a real difficult person to not come back changed. Definitely from coming out of the military. Also, when I first started, of course, I started under Mark and Jack Lettinen at the time, who was a 60-year-old driller then. And, you learn to listen to what the man's saying and try and suck in as much as you can, as quick as you can, because you're going to need it someday. You're going to need his knowledge. When they're gone, you're going to need that knowledge. And hopefully you remember it, and it makes you better. It makes you, and honestly, I try to learn. I'm still learning every day. I've been doing this for a long time, and you still learn every day, every hole. Even every guy I work with, even guys that are younger than me, but they've drilled different with different people. I try to listen to what they're going to say about it. You got to listen to what everybody's got to say, for sure. Because if you don't, that might be that little bit of information that you just stuck something in the ground, and who knows what's going to happen next.
So we often in this industry, and we've talked about it multiple times in this podcast series, about the next generation and men and women coming into the industry, and who we can, how do we work with them? And I'm just going to go right to Jake with this, because I saw the glint in his eye. Jake, you're a young guy in the construction industry right now, but you're also a captain in the United States Air Force. But since we just continue to have this tribal culture of these damn kids can't work. They don't know how to get up. They don't know how to do this. How do you overcome that? And do you get treated differently when you go, I actually am Captain Jacob Fletcher of the United States Air Force?
Well, to answer the first part of that, it's something we talk about that I can't even take credit for, because it's something that's been out there, but I think it's just something that doesn't get talked about as much especially in the construction industry as a whole. And it's adaptive leadership, and we've talked about it on previous episodes, and it's really just something I learned naturally through sports and through different things growing up, because I was a catcher on the high school baseball team, as I said, and I had to learn how to talk and communicate to different styles of people. And so I think that's kind of the breakdown of what we're talking about is, a lot of these younger folks, and I've dealt with it in the Air Force as a captain. I don't ever, when I go out on a project for Red Horse, I don't ever get to sit down and handpick the team. I usually have a sergeant that I say, okay, I'll take care of the design, and then you figure out, the guys that we're going to have, or the men and women we're going to have on this job. And then once we get out there, I have to observe and I have to understand the different types of people I have out there, because I've had some that are just very easy, that are motivated, and I can go to those people and I can, we can give direction. And there's other ones that are just a little bit different, and maybe they're dealing with something not related to the job, or, maybe they're new to Red Horse and they don't understand that it's a different style of work. Maybe the people that come into drilling don't realize how hard of a industry it can be to work in, because it's hard work. That's something Chief can attest to that. We get guys that come in and they don't understand the workload, the difference between regular engineering and what Red Horse does. And so there's an adjustment period where for us, we don't even actually, some of these people that come in the drilling industry, they can leave or a company can decide not to stick with them. We don't have that luxury at Red Horse. We have to figure out how to adjust, these people and get them to adjust to understand what the mission is at Red Horse. So it's something we have learned how to do as leaders, especially in Red Horse, is that how to adapt to different types of people and get the most out of those people. And it is interesting. People do seem to treat me different when they find out that, actually, when I interviewed for this job that I'm currently in, I work for a general contractor here in Las Vegas. My boss is asking me about what my typical days were like in the military. And I said, actually, I do exactly, or did exactly what you do. I've done your job. So I'm enjoying being just part of the team and not necessarily having to be the person in charge of everything. It gives me a different perspective. But yeah, I had that experience, and it's very fun when you get these people that maybe somebody else gave up on, or somebody said, well, I can't work with that guy. A lot of times, Chief knows this, sometimes people will send you their bad apples, right? People will send you the guys, oftentimes, sometimes that's what we get on our drilling teams is, well, this, I don't really want to work with this guy. I'm going to send him down to the drilling team. And then, what uniquely happens if you have good leadership is you turn those people into very motivated people because you understand how to communicate with different people. So that was my long-winded answer to that.
Well, and that's, it's very interesting. I want to go to Dave with this and then Chief. We are a very similar culture and tribe, the United States military tribe and brotherhood, and then the drilling tribe of even the 150. But Dave, how often is it the apprentices or pre-apprentices you get, they had ideas of grandeur of where they were going to be as an operator before they came to you?
Well, and I get that a lot where we weed that out usually in the pre-apprentice phase, but where you get somebody who believes, well, I'll apply for this, but then I'm going to go run a crane, or I'm going to do this, which you may well run a crane in support of drilling operations. But it's funny that Jake say, the bad apples, or, whatever, because we get the same thing. Someone who maybe didn't score well, or didn't believe they could get in a different way. So the amount of operator applications to be an operator is huge compared to the amount of driller applications, and then the percentages of those. So it's easier to get in as a driller. And what they don't know is, and Brock's been with me when we've done it, is our vetting process is, hey man, you're going to be in there and you're going to be working geotech holes, and you're going to be possibly unplugging grouters that Brock plugged up. That was something that happened a couple times, right? But you're going to do the same things on the job in this vetting process that we have. And you can tell the guy that's like, well, I didn't sign up for this. Chief said, well, it's hard work, right? It's much harder work than people have any idea getting into it. They don't realize what they're getting into. They hear, in our case, they hear operating engineers, and they imagine someone pulling levers on a bulldozer or a crane, and it's much, much harder than that physically. Although mentally, it is still, in my opinion, you still have to know more. You have to use that mind's eye. So it is so much more involved to be good in this industry and progress your career as possibly a lot of other industries that are traditional civil construction industries. So I've always felt we vet them and we get them out there and try to help them put their best foot forward. Because when I'm done with the pre-apprenticeship, my goal is to make sure, I don't know that they're going to a caisson drilling company, a water well drilling company, a geotechnical drilling company. I have no idea where they're going, but I know that they'll make their first couple days there and be able to then grow from there. So that's what it's really all about. And it's the same thing that they try to do in the military. They're trying to take someone that kid that I've always called number 4. I have 3 sons and one that was here constantly. So we always called him number 4. And like Dan said, they're going to change him, but the core was good. But he just had, he had a little bit of this, right? He wasn't worried to backtalk somebody or whatever. They'll fix the flaws and they'll amplify the good. And I think that's what we all have to strive for when we get that kid that they say, oh, yeah, these kids don't work. Find what motivates them, find what is good about them, amplify that, and that'll help you modify some of the other things.
So, Chief, wells on multiple continents, Bolivia, obviously in a water crisis, where you guys were in the Gulf, water crisis, Africa, water crisis. You're given these men and women, and you have to vet them and then coach them into a program that is unlike anything they've been, told they were going to do in the United States military. Obviously the recruiters always paint this glorious picture of, Space Force and shit, and so tell us some things you've done, or how do you create a drill team with this 30 years of experience? You just have so much experience. I want to know, how do you bring a team together and overcome situations?
So, I basically do what my boss did to me. What I try and do is anybody that wants to be a driller, I bring them on at the end of a project when everything is dirty, everything needs to be cleaned up, the whole 9 yards. When we bring the rig back, the tender truck, all of that stuff, it gets parked. The new guys come on, might be 1 or 2 guys that want to try well drilling, because honestly in the Air Force, we're all heavy equipment operators. We do horizontal construction, which is concrete, asphalt, those types of things, utility cuts, things of that nature. The well drilling, the explosive demolition, the rock quarry, that's all special capability for us. So a lot of us, we could spend 20, 30 years in the military as heavy equipment operators and never get to do this. So when you get the opportunity, you want to go try something different. And a lot of the times, like Dave said, they come in thinking, oh, I'm going to get to operate this or do that. And that's not the case. So what I try and do is gauge them by giving them the dirtiest, nastiest job I can right off the bat to see how well they're going to do with it. Case in point, I had a staff sergeant want to be a well driller. He was great at his job as a heavy equipment operator. He came on, I told him, hey, the rig needs clean the cab, rig, everything. Just got done off the project, so it was fairly filthy. And I told him, when it's done, I want you to take yellow paint and paint the table and the hook block, because those are moving parts. I want safety in mind for these guys that are on the rig. I gave him the morning to do it. Not a big project, just it was him and another guy. And I told him he was a crew lead. Come back a couple 3 hours later, and I'm looking, and there's still mud around the table, and he's painted over some of it. There's a lot of dirt still in the cab, and the way I was taught is cleanliness is next to godliness. So if we came back from a drill site, we cleaned that cab, you could eat off the floor, to make sure that everything was clean, Everything was ready to go. If there was any issues maintenance-wise, we could identify them because the rig was clean. There wasn't mud splattered all over it. I pulled the staff sergeant aside and I asked him, hey, why didn't you clean the table completely before you started painting it? He said, well, I did the best I could. Well, for me, that's not a good answer. You give it 100%, 110%, or you don't even waste your time on it, move on. So that staff sergeant basically went to the wayside. I didn't need him at that point. Sent him back to the flight, told him, hey, you guys keep him. He's a good equipment operator. I can't use him. Let him do something else. For the other guys, the program that we had, you basically had to go to school to become a driller. You could start with the team and be a helper, learn your way around the rig, learn your way through the mud and the air systems, learn how to trip pipe in, things of that nature, but you never really got to operate or make decisions, not until you went to the school, which is at Port Hueneme in China Lake. It's a Navy school. But that school is 6 weeks long. It's very expensive to send our guys to. So we would test them out at least through one project as a helper, gopher, whatever, doing the menial things. And if they still wanted to be a driller after that, then we start building them up to be well drillers. But it was few and far between. You either hated well drilling or you loved well drilling. There wasn't a whole lot in between because it's a heavy, dirty, long hours, lots of days, being over the hole type of job. So you got to weed out a lot of the guys that, thought they wanted to be well drillers, but, just couldn't make the cut. Push them aside, work on the guys that want to be there. And I'm not saying just push them aside as in get rid of them, but there's different aspects to our job that you can put them in where they can excel. And even well drillers on the site, some of them want to do mud because they like the chemistry aspect of it. Others want the heavy labor, tripping and rod, whatever. And others actually want to run the rig. Not everybody wants to do the same thing all the time. So you just got to find those niches, kind of like what Dave said, find what they're good at and then make them excel in that area and bring the team together as one so that they all know what needs to happen at any particular time on the site. Now, that's a lot easier said than done. But if you shoot for that goal to where, it's one family on the job site and we all know our jobs and what our strengths and weaknesses are, then, you could 9 times out of 10, it's the team that makes the well, not the machine. So that's where you got to put your time and effort into. Make sure that the rig is safe to operate, and then take care of the guys, and they'll take care of the job. So.
And I think that's a great analogy for outside of the military as well, right? We have equipment, but I've never seen a piece of equipment drill well by itself, right? And just a driller by himself typically can't do it either. He needs to be more than an operator. He needs to manage personalities and including himself as well. And I think that's where so many people, like Dan had mentioned, fall short. I know in the field I didn't always meet that expectation the way I could have. But as I progressed and eventually wound up a tool pusher, I had no more choice. I had to be, I had to be managing people as well as equipment in order to get things done. And we were productive when I figured out how to do that. I was a bull. I would bull through everything myself. When it was me in the field, I keep hitting it. Okay, we got to work 18 hours to make it work. Fine, we'll work 18 hours, whatever it is. Well, you can't do that once you're sitting in the seat and it takes somebody else to do it because they may not have the same drive, see things the same way. So you have to kind of handle them a little different. But I think that this is one of the industries that doesn't change on the military side very, very far from what it is on the civilian side.
It comes back to, and I've heard this from all of the great guys I've got to work with in the drilling industry or in the the military side of the drilling industry, that embrace the suck, right? We are a brotherhood that's going to get muddy. Copper coat's going to be in places that we never thought it should be. It's those jobs are just those jobs. And I want to come back to Dan with 17 years of experience. Obviously, you've had some helpers come and go. What is your go-to onboarding when you get a helper so that you can vet them and retain them?
Well, I think honestly, the company I work for, the guy most of the guys I have now that where we're at, we've had at least 10 years. When they do come on, the young guys, I mean, we send them out with, everybody gets a driller. You go out and see if this guy can handle it. Well, also, for the most part, we log our own holes. So, your first week with a new helper, hopefully they've been to the training site and been with Dave and they understand what this kind of rod is and this is going to go on there and this is a spoon and this is how you open it, stuff like that. Sometimes you get a guy that just showed up. We called for a guy and there's nobody in the hall and somebody says, hey, here's a kid, we're taking him, you guys got him. And those are the harder days, especially there's only two of us on the rig and now I'm drilling. I'm showing them how to crack open a spoon. I'm showing them what the log is, how to write a log. And, for the most part, the company's expecting you to get the same amount of footage you get with a guy that you had that's a 20-year helper and without an engineer on with you to log. Well, that just puts even more on you, of course. And in general, we all still get it done. You may be a lot more tired by the time you get to the house. But you can try out a helper. We've had helpers quit in a day. I mean, we've had guys quit in a day. No, can't do it. I'm not doing it. Years ago, when we first started with the union, and we were just running under the company, we had concrete testers on another side of it. And when they get slow and we get busy, we'd break another helper out to be a driller, and we'd call for some of those testers to come out. Those guys would definitely quit in a day. They can't handle doing what we do. But the kids the guy, and not even just kids, but the guys we get that come out, for the most part, you're going to know it in a day or two. Breaking rods and lifting heavy stuff. A lot of these guys, they've never had to walk around in the mud all day carrying a 70-pound rod and trying to put it on. And, for us, you're putting them on by hand. It's not like you got a carousel on a water well and you're tripping a 120-foot hole in and out every day and sampling every 2.5 to 5 feet. Every 2.5 to 5 feet sometimes, special testing and, casing the holes and all that kind of stuff. So that takes its toll on some of these guys real quick. And then at the end of the day, drive back to the shop because you're in a work truck. You got to get in your car and then drive home. So the hours catch up with a lot of these guys too. But I think if, for the most part, if these younger guys make it more than about 2 months, they're gonna stay. Like Dave said, a lot of them, they have aspirations of becoming, I'm going to be a crane guy, or I'm going to go sit in a Bobcat, or I'm going to go do this. If they make it for a little while in this industry, I think they start to like it also, for the most part. We've had a lot of guys, I think, that stay in.
I've
definitely.
always said, Dan, that once drilling gets in your blood,
Yep.
it doesn't matter what you wanted to do before, because you'll still wind up back drilling. And that's, I had left drilling at some point for about a year and a half in the middle of my career, and it came back and found me. Right? It wasn't that I wanted to come back to drilling. It was corresponded with the whole unionization thing. The company I had originally worked for came and said, hey, we'll sign. You need to get that guy back to run our division.
Sure.
And so I got a phone call to tell me just that. Hey, you're the linchpin in this, so you're going to go over here. and do this. And it turned out to be probably the best thing that's ever happened to me. Led to me running that division for that company for the next 8 years, and then eventually to the job I have now for the last 11 years. My God, it's 11 years now that I've been doing this. But it's, once it gets in your blood, I'll take this over any other type of civil construction that there is. Now, that being said, there's some days I'm like, man, my back hurts, my arm hurts, my knees hurt, and I feel, do I really want to keep doing this? But the next morning I feel good enough. I'm like, all right, let's go.
Exactly. And a big part of this also is variation for us, especially in geotech. I've been hanging on a platform off of a crane, drilling 40 feet into a coal pile so they could test the coal to fire up a power plant. And then 2 days later, I'm inside a cofferdam on a D25, sitting on top of I-beams, drilling down beside the cofferdam because it's failing. A week later, I may be coring a case on because they don't know what's going on with it over a river somewhere. And that has added to a large amount of, let's say, fun for me. And it keeps it the same. I actually get myself bored. If I'm on a job where we got 40 holes that are exactly the same in a small area, I'm bored in a week, 2 weeks. I want off. I want to send me to a barge job, send me to an Army Corps job, send me somewhere else. I don't care where it is. I'm kind of bored with the place. I'm still going to go there and do what I do because, like I said earlier, every hole is still different in one way or another. But I'm usually I love the variation of going somewhere, doing something else. This is going to be this way, or your engineer calls up and says, hey, we got to do this a little different, or we're going to add this testing, or we're going to do this or whatever. So it does change it constantly. And I think a lot of the younger guys get into that too. I've always put it to them. We're working at a power plant. You look up and you see a guy in a big bulldozer just pushing coal into a conveyor all day long. I'm like, man, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do that all day long. I would much rather be standing there freezing in the middle of winter, getting sprayed with water on a drill rig, having to actually think about what I'm doing all day long, and maybe have to turn wrenches in the middle of it because something might mess up any day.
Right?
Yeah, well, you know how it goes. But I would much rather do that any day than sit in that bulldozer or sit in that excavator just digging out something all day long. I would so much rather just go to another site and find another hole.
So there's something that's been said here. Dave started talking about getting sore and difficulties of the job. He said it's in our blood, and let's face it, blood is part of this job, right? Like blood, sweat, and tears. There's situations where we get injuries, catastrophic failures, and stuff. So I want to start with Chief and then go to Dan and then go to Jake. Chief, you were in EOD and you went to the drilling industry. What did you feel less risk in? The EOD aspect or drilling with all of the things that are going on a job site?
So let's start off with the EOD side of things. I wasn't actually EOD. I was a heavy equipment operator, but our job was to demolish some revetments, which are large concrete walls around aircraft shelters. And I knew some EOD friends of mine, and I knew that blowing them down would be a lot faster than taking the jackhammer to them because they're fairly good-sized concrete structures. So, I started working with the EOD guys. I had my team, they had their team. We would drill the holes, help them place the C4, and then stand back and watch the fireworks go off. Same thing when I was in Bosnia. They would find munitions that needed to be destroyed. I would lay the sand bed down inside a bunker for them with heavy equipment, and then they would lay the explosives in there, and we'd stand back and again watch fireworks go off. So I had some idea of how explosives worked. And then of course came to Red Horse, got into well drilling, also got into explosive demolition. Finally, after a few years of well drilling, they went ahead and let me into explosive demo as well. There are a lot of controls, safety controls over explosives, a lot. But I will tell you, a lot of them are just, common sense, right? If C4, if you light it on fire, it'll burn nicely, give you heat. Don't strike it, it'll go off. That kind of thing. But in well drilling, there are so many different aspects to safety. For instance, if the rig that we had was a table drive rig, you can't stand up on that platform with anything loose on your body. We would wear Carhartts because we didn't want to wear out our uniforms, and sometimes the guys would let a strap. They just have one strap over the shoulder instead of having both straps on, and I would grab them by that loose strap and pull them off the platform. And basically, hey, that's a no-go. You're going to get your stuff caught in the table, and there's no safety switch on this rig except for the shifter right behind the table. It was basically a truck-mounted rig. It had a 13-speed Fuller in front and a 4-speed table drive transmission in the back. And I've seen that rig break tool joints, like literally break steel in half from the torque that it can provide. That's why we like table drive rigs. Top heads make things a lot easier, but if you want torque and speed, table drive's the way to go, in my opinion. But that's just me. But you also have the aspect of hoisting, 300 or 400 pound rods, all the chemicals that we work with. Me personally, I was in the desert, opened up an old can of HTH, the chloride, and it had been sitting for so long it fermented. Well, when I opened it, it just overwhelmed me for like 6 hours. I couldn't breathe, had a hard time with my respiratory system because of it. And it's not like I knew it was old or fermented or whatever. It just, I opened it to use it, and it overwhelmed me. But there's a lot of different aspects. The slip and fall aspect, if you're using mud drilling, and everything's so damn heavy in well drilling. Especially if you're doing anything bigger than a 6-inch hole. Those bits, stabilizers, collars, any one of them can just roll over and break your ankle, on the drill rack. So you definitely have a lot more safety that you got to consider on the well drilling side of things than you do with explosive demolition. Like I said, explosives, cut and dry, this is how you do it. There's a lot of safety aspects around it. But it's up to the driller on the site to make sure that all of his guys are taking into consideration what all the safety aspects are on the drill site. I'll give you just a real quick example. My first hiccup on the drill rig, we had an SS-135 table drive, of course. Didn't have any breakout tongs. The way we'd break it, we'd put a cast iron pipe wrench against the pipe, reverse spin, lock it against the mast, and that would break it for us. I think this was my first drill site. Quarters were tight. The mud pit, literally we had to dig a mud pit, was maybe 5 feet off the side of the rig. I didn't hold the wrench in place. I held the wrench in place to break the joint, but when I tried to pull it off, it slipped down to the pipe that was in the table in the slip. And when they reversed it, the wrench came around, hit me in the side, threw me. I flew that 5-6 feet right into the mud pit. Not only could I not breathe, but I couldn't feel bottom. So I'm sitting there trying to catch my breath and tread mud, basically. And everybody's standing there laughing before they realize, oh crap, he's going under. So they reached in and grabbed me. So yeah, safety, young drillers, if you're not careful around the drill site, hopefully you got somebody there that can take care of you and watch over for your safety. It could be very hazardous, very hazardous. But I survived it, moved on, bruised ribs, but not a big deal. Kept on drilling, got to make hole.
I think that's a great segue into Dan. I think we'd all love to have a Navy corpsman on our site. What does your first aid kit look like different from, a standard kit that we'd have on a truck? Is there anything extra that you believe is necessary, or how do you treat some of these situations, being that triage better than any of us would?
So what's kind of funny about that is two of the other guys had my truck, my service truck, maybe about a month ago. And of course, somebody gets into my truck and they decide they're going to reorganize it for you. So they came back in after about 3 days and I'm like, all right, I'm taking my truck back. And the helper, he looks at me and he goes, why the hell do you need 4 first aid kits? Because they had reorganized my truck and I had 4 first aid kits in there. And I'm like, well, because if something goes wrong, I'm the guy you want. Okay. If you tear something up or if you hurt yourself, I could say I carry the standard first aid kit stuff. In theory, I should know how to do everything I need to just about without it. Just from training and such. I was a EMT paramedic for 4 years in the Navy, on top of just being a corpsman and everything else. But I can tell you, I fell myself once on top. I was walking across the side of the rig and I fell and I hit a piece of channel and I ripped my knee open and I got down off the rig and there was another crew on site and it was raining and the one driller will tell you, yeah, I looked over and he's standing there with his pants around his ankles and I'm holding my knee because I tore it open. And I'm like, go get me the first aid kit, as a helper had run over. And he came running back with a greasy jacket. I'm like, no. He's just trying to give me something to wrap it. I'm like, no, I actually keep a couple of battle dressings with me, which are big, heavy duty battle dressings. Most of the time, first aid kit's got a couple 4x4s, a couple of this and that, but I keep a couple battle dressings. I always want to have a tourniquet of some sort. Luckily enough, we've never had a major injury. Most injuries, I think, end up being like a pulled back, like Dave was saying, you're sore at the end of the day or something. We had one person slip. He was running out casing in the snow and, on the cable, and he slipped or something and fell with his face across and knocked his teeth out, a couple teeth. But teeth you're not going to do much with. You can bite down on them and call an ambulance or wait and whatever you're going to do with it. But we haven't had a major, huge injury. I've broke fingers of my own. I know I broke them. Middle of the night job before my gloves held them together for me. I kept drilling, of course, because that's one of the things for me. Corpsmen don't get sick, so we just keep going. And case in point, I was today is actually an anniversary. It's 7 years. I had a kidney transplant 7 years ago, and I was on dialysis for 2 years before the transplant. And I drilled every day. I drilled, and I'd get done at 4:30 in the afternoon, and I'd go to sit in dialysis for 5 hours a night, 3 days a week. Because who's going to pay the insurance? So I got to get it done. So that's and then I had a kidney transplant, like I said, 7 years ago. And I was back at work 3 months after that. I was back on the rig after they gutted me, more or less. But in general, first aid kit, everybody should know first aid. Everybody should know CPR. Absolutely. Just like Chief was saying, they didn't have a safety on the rig, but an accident happens at a half a second, less than any second. And everybody should know how to shut the rig down. Everybody needs to know first aid. The company I work for, we do a lot of Army Corps work, so everybody has CPR. Everybody has first aid. But there's just there's no way. I mean, I think our biggest injuries are usually somebody cracking a hand or you know, just crushing a hand, or it's not even a crush. You hit it or you hit it on something or whatever. And hopefully it's cold out, I guess, and you can keep going, right? But you never know what's going to happen. I haven't had any where I thought, all right, we're going to have to sew that up right away. But it can always happen. It's got to be there. It's got to be in your mind that there's going to be an injury at some point for somebody. And all we can do is hope that it'll never be any of us. That's for sure. I don't know. It's a great place to work. You just got to keep your eyes open and keep your head on a swivel, I guess.
So you brought something up with, we know injuries are going to happen. And on this podcast, we've mentioned a few times, right now, injuries themselves are terrifying. Even a non-life-threatening, relatively minor injury now is a much bigger deal, because you're going to be hard-pressed to get service at a hospital. And if you get it, you are going in to an area that may have COVID-19 patients, and you know, this pandemic raging the way it is. And you know, I saw a chart. I don't know why they bothered to print the chart of the U.S. The other day, because every single state is currently characterized as uncontrolled spread, save for, I believe it was Arkansas, was not currently uncontrolled spread, and they were just under it. But you know, that's something that if you haven't listened to the other podcast, you have to think about as well. You know, that basic triage on the rig might have to last quite a few hours before somebody could actually be seen.
Absolutely. Yeah, we just had a guy last week who ended up in a small car accident, and they ended up, we tried to take him just to the acute care, and more or less they said, oh, you're over this age, you have to go to the hospital, get checked out. Well, he goes to the ER, and he said every nurse in there, all they were saying was, everybody's got COVID. Everybody's got, so, you know, he actually decided himself to take a couple days off because he feels that he may have been exposed just by going to the ER, you know, and there was nothing wrong with him, but you are, at any time you're going to walk into any medical facility, you're going to have to know that there's going to be someone in there that may have the COVID. Granted, they're not maybe going to be able to transmit it to you, but it is there for sure.
So I'll tell you on the safety aspect, that's one of your pre-planning requirements. I'll give you an example. When we were in Bolivia drilling back in '99, I think it was, we were in the middle of the jungle basically. Our quickest means of getting to a hospital was being airlifted by helicopter to the closest city, which was about 30 minutes away by helicopter. If we had to load somebody in a pickup and drive them out there, you're looking at an hour and a half to almost 2 hours on bumpy roads to get them medical attention. We had the basics on site, first aid kits, battle dressings, the whole 9 yards. But to actually get experienced medical attention, you know, that's the route we had to take. So it was very important for us to pre-plan our strategy when it came to somebody getting hurt, if they needed some kind of transportation to a medical facility, or the type of medical first aid kits that we had on site, you know, basically bolstered them up because we were so far away from any type of first aid, actual, you know, medical facility. We're all trained, being in the military, we're all trained CPR and combat type injuries and all that, but that's just a quick reactionary type of assistance. You still need to get them to a hospital. You know, we all know how to put tourniquets on, But if you're going to put a tourniquet on somebody because they're bleeding really bad from a cut or lost limb or whatever, you still have to get them to a hospital, figure out that process before you even start drilling. It's very important to have that aspect in the back of your mind all the time, especially as a lead driller. How are you going to get this guy the help that he needs, or gal? How are you going to get them the help that they need if they get hurt? Because that's mission number one for us. If the hole fails, okay, whatever, we'll move over, start a new hole. If one of our guys gets hurt, that's a lot more serious for us. We can always drill another hole. We can't always replace that body that we lost. So
Yeah, and there was
Sure.
I'm sorry.
safety's always top priority.
There was that situation on a V2000 in Afghanistan where a service rep for that rig was removing a hammer union and it didn't loosen up. And he kept going and going, not thinking about it being under pressure. Who knows what type of things were going through his head being a civilian. And he was blown off the rig, broke both arms, dislocated his hip. They helicoptered him to Bagram, and then he got on a plane and went to Germany. All in. I have no idea what that cost when it was said and done, being the civilian contractor on there. But that was a situation where the best triage for him was Germany, and you guys know better than I do, but it's not an exact 45-minute flight to get from Afghanistan to Germany. So we have to be smart. We have to be risk averse. We have to know what we're doing. We got to be able to say stop, use the stop work authority. I want to shift to Jake, and we're about in our last discussion, and it's about transitioning from full-time military to finding a job. And Jake, you and I were just talking about this, and job statistics where they are with this crazy virus and whatnot. On average, a veteran is out of work while they're looking for work. How long?
Typically, on average, 3 to 4 months is what they told me when I was leaving service. For people who don't pre-plan, because when you're transitioning, I don't think a lot of people come up with a plan. You have to have a plan. I started my planning, and I would probably say that my planning was even too short at 6 months. I think to be ultimately very successful and really hone in on the target of where you want to end up, I'd recommend even a year, if you can be thinking about that a year. I'm sure as Chief, has a perspective of retirement and determining what you want to do. My timeline is 6 months. I started applying for jobs, and I knew when my date of separation was going to be. I knew where my family, where we were at. I had those discussions with my wife. But it's all about having a plan. And there are so many veterans that leave the military that don't have a plan. And it's not like the military doesn't educate you on these things. It's just, I don't know that a lot of people pay attention to them. I paid attention, and I think the good thing that this pandemic has done is normally the classes that you have to attend to transition are in person. You have to take time out. You have to go to these classes in person. I was able to sit at my desk on a computer and listen and take notes as I was doing things. So I think that's something that should stay around. It made it more perceptive for me. I was able to immediately contact the different resources I wanted to use, which, by the way, there are a lot of great resources I think a lot of people probably don't use. But, I was, because of my planning and my use of the resources, I was only out of work for a month. It only took me a month before the company I work with now hired me, and I had a job. So I don't know what else you wanted me to get into.
No. It looked like Dave had something to say.
Well, I was gonna start because it looked like with Jake's pausing, but no, we use for my program we use helmets to hard hats, right? So if you're a veteran or you know someone currently in that might be interested in our industry to be an operator, to be in one of the trades, helmets to hard hats does do a very good job of placing veterans. But like Jake said, you've got to come looking and apply and have the paperwork through helmets to hard hats. We do occasionally get a veteran that applies that in an interview talking to them to help their scores will help them then go to helmets to hard hats and get some of the stuff but done to improve their scores. But if they came with all of that stuff already done, it really increases their chances of getting out to a company.
There's a really popular program that a lot of people are taking advantage of now, and it's called Skills Bridge. And basically, it's where your company can, the Air Force or the military. I don't know, Chief. I don't know if they do it in the other branches. I only know of it from the Air Force perspective. But basically, go ahead.
Some of the other branches are starting to get into it, but the Air Force definitely has the market cornered on it right now. So hopefully it does transition to some of the other services because it's a good program.
Yeah, basically what it is it's a veteran. The Air Force will pay for a veteran to come work for your company for 6 months. So it's basically an internship that you don't have to foot the bill for. And your company can apply to get hooked into that program. I've actually made suggestions to companies that are hurting for people that it would be worthwhile to do it. Because at the end of that 6 months, you're not under an obligation to hire that person, nor is that person under obligation to want to accept an offer with your company if they don't have to. But it sets people up for success because it gives them a piece of experience outside of the military. Like Dave was saying, it's important to have a lot of your, the paperwork and everything prepared. And that's what I was talking about, those resources, because translating what you do in the military to something that civilians can understand and see how it's useful and how the experience relates, that's a big breakdown in the process. A lot of times there are a lot of people who have a lot of skills that could be used in a wide variety of industries that just don't know how to communicate it.
And it's I enjoyed the story Dan said because it is 100% our tribal nepotism drilling industry. Outside of what we talk about, Dan's neighbor said, "Hey, we're hiring." Most men that I know in this industry have somehow started that weren't part of the family because of a neighbor, a cousin, a brother, something like that. And I've talked to Chief a couple times about some projects I have that his leadership and 30 years of experience and just bringing a different perspective, because what I appreciate about working with you guys, what I've heard today from Dan, is the whole idea of some of that military discipline that we really could use in the drilling industry, with knowing that we have some disruption and chaos happening, and just the experience. And then also that the brotherhood, it's noble to be part of making water come out of the ground or retrieving cores and logs and understanding the impact you're having to an engineering project, or the cool things Dan talked about today about qualifying coal to understanding why a dam is failing. It's discovering the unknown from a drilling aspect is what drives me in being in here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
That's it. That's that's the essence of what Dan was saying. A different site every day. It's what drove me to to do all the different things and try to bid all the specialty work that I could, sometimes not knowing how we were going to accomplish it as per the spec. But yeah, we can do it. I know we can do it. Let's get to work, and let's find a way to do these oddball things, because that was a challenge I enjoyed. And I think that rings true for most drillers, is that they enjoy a challenge, right? We enjoy to overcome the conditions, right? There's never been a hole that wanted to be drilled, yet we've been able to force them to be drilled. And I think that's it. That unknown is where that getting into your blood happens.
Just one other thing I want to say from myself is from being a corpsman. When I was a junior corpsman, I'd be working on a patient, on a ward, on whatever, but I was dealing with doctors who were, you know, commanders, lieutenant commanders, captains in the Navy. These were very much higher ranking people than I was, doctors and nurses. And I still take that now, just from the interaction of dealing with people that are so much more senior to you, let's say in education, in thought process, whatever, and being able to walk right up to that person and say, look, this is what I have going on. This is what I think we should do. You tell me what you should think we should do, and I'm going to do what you tell me. And I use that on a daily basis with engineers. Like David said early, that Clyde Baker. I've called Clyde Baker and said, hey, this is what this hole's doing. This is what I think it's going on. And I deal with some of the best foundation design engineers in the country on a daily basis. In a phone call, on a drilling site, in a meeting. And I've dealt with these people, and just being able to deal with them, talk to them, get your point across, do that. I personally believe, working the way I did in the hospital and dealing with doctors and nurses and stuff the way I did back then, and being able to talk to, you know, like a junior enlisted talking to an upper officer at the time. Back then, I transfer that over now, just in dealing with engineers and the decisions we have to make. You know, oh yeah, well, if I'm coring a case on it and I find a bad spot, I got to be the guy that walks up and says, there's a bad spot. And I know there's going to be about 1 million phone calls and 20 engineers on a phone somewhere to make a decision on something that's going on. And it's not my fault. I found it. You know, it's nothing I did. Somebody else obviously had an issue before they called me to come and find out what I could figure out. And I've been on many jobs like that. You know, there's things like that definitely have transferred from the military for me in dealing with the decision-making process with people that are much higher up in the field. But then again, I also have learned a lot from these people over the years, in a lot of the engineering side. And I'm grateful for all that I've learned when it comes to all that.
Well, that's really the essence of what we were going to talk about today, right? How your experiences in the military lead you towards success in this industry. And I think that, you know, we've got 3 people who have had completely different military experiences that all wound up successful in this industry, whether it be in the military or out. And I want to be the first one to thank Dan, Al, and Jake for their service, and thank each and every veteran that's listens to this for their service. We truly appreciate all you've sacrificed for us.
It's been our pleasure. Trust me.
Absolutely.
We do it not for the money, but, you know, mostly for the people that we meet and the friendships that we make. So.
And that's the beauty of this, the nobility of what you men have done as part of our United States military, the veterans you are today. And Dan's point on collaboration is key to success, regardless if we're deployed or we're stateside. and all that you bring. The drilling companies right now, we have, a deficit in good drillers throughout the country, good helpers, and we don't hire enough veterans. And I know many drill companies that owners are Vietnam vets and First Gulf War vets, and I knew many World War II vets, but that number is, slowly changing it with it, being so long ago. So we do thank you. I'm going to send out this episode with a song that I found by a gentleman named Michael Shine, but it's called Hero for Hire. And I think it's appropriate. We, as the drilling industry, from geotech to caisson to water well to geothermal cathodic, tunneling, micro piles, raised bores, everything we do out there in the industrial end, we ought to be grabbing every one of these talented men and women and making them part of our teams, because they will make us a better company and we can be more successful. And it's, when it gets in their blood, they stay with us. So I thank everybody. This has been the Brock and Dave Drillercast. Thanks again, gentlemen, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
Thanks, Brock.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe. Keep turning to the right.
Been walking the night through, sleep talking with devils. They wrestle with my heartbeat to see what it is that moves me. And I don't wanna live here when nobody believes me. So take me to the ocean or give me your last kiss. Do not doubt my desire. Where there's smoke, there's a fire. Do I look like a fool now? Do I look like a fool now? I'm a hero. I'm a hero for hire. And now my heart beats pounding. Worldwide there's an alarm that's been sounding. This is not the end of the line. There's a weight on my chest that I need to make life. I am determined to have headlines and endless photographs. Why don't you believe me? Your eyes do not lie, darling. Tell me you see me. Do not doubt my desire. Where there's smoke, there's a fire. Do I look like a fool now? Do I look like a fool now? I'm a hero. I'm a hero for hire. Don't delay my love. Set me aside for the night, and I come running. I will set aside for the night. I'm a hero. I'm a hero